IFR holding. Probably one of the most confusing things when you first learn instrument flying. Parallel, offset, direct entries, timing, wind corrections. It all feels rather a lot. But in this video, I'm going to break it down step by step so you can actually understand it and fly it confidently. A hold is a maneuver around a holding fix achieved by a number of turns whilst keeping the aircraft within a specified area. We hold for a number of reasons, including traffic separation, traffic sequencing, to wait for the weather to improve, or to descend to a suitable altitude to commence an approach. A holding fix can be anything from a NDB, VOR, or a GPS waypoint. A standard holding pattern are right-hand turns, but they can be left-hand turns if stated on the chart. A hold consists of a specified inbound track towards a holding fix, a 180-degree turn onto the outbound leg, tracking outbound to a specified time, distance or radial, a 180-degree turn to intercept the inbound track. Each lap of the hold will take around 4 minutes below 14,000 feet, as each leg is 1 minute, or 1.5 minutes above 14,000 feet. We maintain rate 1 turns or 25 degrees angular bank, whichever is less, which means each turn takes approximately 1 minute, making 4 minutes in the hold. A way we can visualise the hold in the air is to use our HSI or the instruments we have on the aircraft. We will use an example as shown in the top left. So first what we need to do is we need to set the screen CDI needle on the inbound course as shown, which is 360 degrees. Even if we're doing single needle holding and not actually using the CDI, we can use this as a fake needle. We will then imagine the holding fix at the centre of the CDI. We will then extend the inbound leg towards the fix as shown. And as it is a right hand hold, we can put our right hand turn into the CDI as shown. We can then complete the hold as shown. And there you have it, a nice easy way to visualize the hold. And please do remember this, as this will come in very useful in a little bit. Okay guys, we are now going to go through how to actually fly a hold step by step. So this is going to be a lot of information, and holding is by far one of the most challenging things of IFR flying. So please do take your time with this. Please pause it, rewind, go through it. And if you've got any questions, please do ask any questions below. So I've drawn out the holding pattern we looked at in the last example. So we got our holding fix, we got an inbound course of 360 degrees, with an outbound track of 180 degrees, with a right hand hold. So we fly single needle holding using a HSI or an ADF pointer. So to differentiate the two, we are going to be using a HSI bearing pointer. So that will show your QDM and QDR. Okay, so our first point of the hold. So let's say we've already done the hold entry and we're established. We'll talk about hold entries later. But on point 1, we want to get established on the inbound track. So we need to be on track 360 degrees to the fix. So we will have 360 degrees on our bearing pointer. And we've already got the green bearing pointer, like we said earlier, up here like that. So that's what our green bearing pointer will look like. Remember, we're just using that as a fake at the moment. What we're really wanting to do is we're wanting to use the blue needle, or whatever colour it is on your instruments, normally blue in the form of a G1000. But that blue needle needs to be pointing, the head of the needle needs to be pointing at 360 degrees to be established on the inbound track. Now, if you haven't watched my NDB video, I would have a go at watching that, as that will explain the principle of how to basically fly using NDBs. But we use the principle, push the head, pull the tail. So if the head was like this, how would we get that onto the heading or onto the track of 360 degrees? If you said fly to the left of the track down here, you would be correct because we're pushing that head. So we want to fly to the left of the needle to push the head round. So if we fly down there, the needle will eventually come round here and then line up with 360 degrees. We need to maintain that for the wind. So if the wind is blowing, that's obviously going to push us. So we will need to fly to the left. So prior to flight, you would have calculated your maximum drift and possibly some single drift components. So we're not going to cover how to calculate max drift or single drift. There are multiple guides online about that, and I will do a video about that shortly. But we're just going to go with single drift. So single drift is your wind correction angle. So that is the heading you turn into wind, maintain a track. The single drift in this scenario to maintain 360 degrees would be 5 degrees. So we'll keep this wind. So to maintain that track at 360 degrees, I would need to fly heading 355 degrees to maintain that track. So we're flying the heading to maintain the track. Once we get to the holding fix, so we're going to make our right hand turn onto our track of 180 degrees. Or are we? So this is where the wind correction becomes a bit more tricky. Because if we were simply to maintain a track of 180 degrees, so we're do the turn 180 degrees, and we're just maintaining that, we will probably overshoot and then fly something like that. The outbound wind correction is as followed. So, if the wind is coming from the non-holding side, so this is the non-holding side, this is the holding side. Okay, so holding, holding, non-holding. So in this case, the wind is coming from the non-holding side. We've got 270 degrees at 10 knots. It's blowing from the non-holding side. So for the non-holding side, wind correction, we do times 2 single drift. So in our case here, we would do 5 times 2, which is 10, and we would fly 10 degrees this way. So we would fly 190 degrees. So 2 times single drift when the wind comes from the non-holding side. When the wind comes from the holding side, we do times 3 single drift. So if the wind was coming from this side at 10 knots, we would do 30 degrees of drift correction. So there is a caveat to the holding side though. So we only do 3 times, except when the new heading, so this new heading, is within 30 degrees of the wind. And other than that, that is the wind correction for the hold. So how do we know when we start the timing? Well, when we complete our turn, it is not when the wings are level, because we could level the wings here, or we could level the wings here. So we need to start the timer when the needle pointer is at 90 degrees to the aircraft. So how much do we fly for? Well, as we spoke about earlier, we fly a 1 minute leg below 14,000 feet. So let's say we're flying 1 minute. We might turn here, and then we massively overshoot and then something like that because the wind's been pushing us that way. So how do we correct the wind? Well, the wind correction is actually, the timing correction is actually quite easy. We do 1 second for every knot of tailwind or headwind. So if we had 5 knots of headwind, we will plus 5 seconds. If we have a tailwind, we would minus 5 seconds. We're now flying, let's say, 1 minute, 5 seconds. That is our outbound timing. So we're flying our 190 degrees for 1 minute and 5 seconds. So our HSI will look something like this. So with regards to tracking, we don't really have anything for us for tracking. So what we need to do is we've got something called the gate. So the gate is a very, very, very important concept here. So the gate is a point that is 30 degrees from the holding fix. So like that. So we draw out 30 degrees. So it would be 30 degrees from this heading. So the gate would be 150 degrees. And how do we fly the gate? Well, if all goes well, we should reach the gate at 1 minute and 5 seconds if we've been flying our 190 degrees heading. But as we know with aviation, nothing's quite that simple. So if we reach the time first, so if we reach the time first, we need to turn inbound. Because if we reach the time first, we're a bit too wide. But if we reach the gate first, this is where things become a bit more. We need to fly the gate. So, if we reach the gate first, so the tail of the needle is reaching 150 degrees before our time. So let's say it was 45 seconds on the clock at the moment. We then need to turn to fly up the gate. So we will turn left to fly a track of 150 degrees and keep that bearing pointer on 150 degrees. Okay, and then we will fly up the gate until our time. So at 1 minute and 5 seconds, we will then turn the correct holding direction, so right, to be established on the inbound track. Okay, and then it's simply back to 1. We're then just flying the hold as if we would. So now we've learned how to hold, we've got to learn how we get into the hold. So there are 3 types of hold entries we can do, which are based on 3 sectors. These 3 sectors are formed by a hold axis and a line through the holding fix intersecting at a 70-degree angle, as you can see the green line. The correct entry is based on heading and not your track, so bear that in mind when you're calculating your entry. If your heading is within 5 degrees of the boundary, you may choose either of the entries. So now we actually have to calculate how we get into the hold, and that's something called a hold entry. So the best way we can calculate this, or the easiest way I find, is by using the pen trick. So we do what we did earlier and visualize the hold on the HSI as we've got here. We'll then grab our pen or pencil and put it 90 degrees to the inbound track. And then depending whether the hold is a right or a left hand hold, we will tilt the pen in the direction of the hold. So in this case, it's a right hand hold. So tilt the pen 20 degrees to the right. Now that might look familiar to you. That looks like our hold entry picture, doesn't it? Put some colours on there. Oh look, we've got our hold entries. So as you can see here, we've got our parallel join up here. We've got our offset entry here. And we've got our direct entry here. And there you go. That is how you very quickly calculate a hold entry in the air. So now we've had a look at the hold entries, we're now going to have a look at how to actually fly them. So we'll start with a parallel entry. So that's coming in from the top here, and we track towards the holding fix. Once we pass over the holding fix and the needle has dropped, we then turn to fly parallel to the inbound track, but we fly the reciprocal of that. Once the wings are level in that turn, so once we're then parallel, we start the timer, and we will fly that leg for 1 minute plus or minus the wind correction as previously mentioned. And then at the timing or the distance, depending on the hold, we fly the opposite direction of the hold. So if it's a right hand hold, we make a left hand turn here to intercept the inbound track. As we will be quite close to the inbound track, we might need to overshoot the turn to get back onto the inbound track. And that is how you fly a parallel entry. So now we'll have a look at the offset entry. So this is following the blue line in this instance, so we track towards the holding fix as we would on any other entry. Once we go over the beacon, we're then simply flying up the gate, so that's 30 degrees to the hold axis. We fly that for a minute plus or minus the wind correction, and then we turn in the same direction as the hold to intercept the inbound track, as shown. And now let's have a look at the direct entry. There's a lot to a direct entry and there's a lot that can change, but it's quite a big sector and that's why. So we'll start with entry from the non-holding side. So that involves tracking towards the beacon, but we need to calculate how far our track is off the beacon. So depending how far off the track is from the beacon, so as you can see below, there's a number of different timings to be applied. So we select the timing that applies, and once we go over the beacon, we hold that heading for that amount of time. So for example, if our track was 45 degrees off the inbound, we'd fly over the beacon, hold that for 10 seconds, and then turn outbound. But then if we're coming in from the holding side, if we've not crossed the hold axis, so if it's quite a shallow angle, we're going to track towards the holding fix, and then we're going to turn 90 degrees to the hold axis for 5 seconds, and then turn to the outbound. But if we've not crossed the hold axis, we're going to fly straight and level for a few seconds, and then we're going to turn right by 90 degrees for 15 seconds, and then turn to the outbound. And that is how you perform hold entries and holding. And that concludes our video on holding today. I know that was a lot of information and very complex, but thank you so much for tuning in, and if you did find that helpful, please feel free to give a like and a subscription. And if you do have any questions at all, please feel free to drop a follow. Thank you very much guys, and I'll see you in the next one.